Dum, da, da, let's talk about it. That was the improvised possible new theme song for, I don't know, I'm just working on it. But shout out Nicole for getting us the shirts. Appreciate the love, appreciate the support. Now let's talk about it, y'all.
Thank you, Nicole. So happy Let's Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Georgette, I'm the mom.
And I'm TJ, I'm the son.
And we both study and work in the field of psychology, and we are passionate about sharing what we know with you so that you can live your best life. So today we're going to talk about resiliency. Resiliency is the ability to adapt and bounce back from disappointments, right? Think about a tree bending in the wind as opposed to breaking.
Ooh.
The tree
Right,
that bends is resilient. Some people are more resilient than others. People who are more resilient tend to have a positive attitude, are optimistic, they can regulate their emotions, and they see failure as a form of helpful feedback.
Boom. None of which are automatic tendencies. We have to work on these, develop these as skills because of the brain negativity bias and our the likelihood that we're going to stumble upon the negative emotions first. So those 4 things that was just mentioned, skill, develop it. Let's go.
So you and I have talked about this statistic and the increasing number of people who are having trouble with dealing with stress and anxiety. And specifically, what do you say about?
They did studies and they said that the average college student is facing the same anxiety levels of that as someone who was fighting in World War II. And I think we can all agree that those are 2 extremely huge differences as far as external stimuli are concerned.
Right. And there's some theories about that. There's actually, I read a biological theory that says because that generation produced more serotonin and more cortisol as a result of the stress, to balance each other out, that the next generation automatically has higher elevations of that. So, but there's also a mindset that we've got a fragile generation of people. And so I found this article actually called The Fragile Generation, and it talks about how the American childhood actually has changed starting in the 80s. There was a shift in parenting norms, new academic expectations, increased regulation, technological advances, and a heightened fear of abduction. And if you were raised when I was raised, you remember the pictures of kids on milk cartons, right? Missing children. And so what happened as a result of that is that there was unsupervised play, exploration, and conflict resolution kind of stopped.
Less experiments, less experiences, I should say, to kind of build certain skills in us.
Right. And as a result of that, some children have become more fragile, more easily offended, and more reliant on others. They actually develop what sociologists call a moral dependency. Right? And I think most people will acknowledge the fact that there's a difference between how I was raised and how you were raised. And having raised you, I know that for a fact I was raised differently than I raised you.
And you're primary source for both.
Yeah, I am. But we had the best intentions. We wanted to keep our children safe.
We tend to want to do that.
Yeah, and so what we ended up doing is we ended up giving participation trophies because we didn't want your feelings to get hurt. We start setting up play dates. Like you didn't play with somebody unless it was coordinated first. And then even the play equipment you played on became, some were just removed and others put up that were more safe. You don't want to hurt yourself, right?
Yeah, you go to Europe, man, those playgrounds are dope. Dude, they do not hold back. That just popped into my head.
I remember you saying that.
Dude, the playgrounds were insane.
Yeah.
Highly recommend all parks all over Europe.
Yeah.
Next subject.
Kids actually learn a lot from play. They increase competency and social interaction with others.
Yes.
They learn other people's perspectives and infer their thoughts and feelings. It's almost the start of emotional intelligence.
It completely is. That's why interpersonal situations such as those are key no matter what the age is, because it's always good to get that information, especially young. How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with that?
And it doesn't have to fix the small stuff. How am I going to
How you
fix the
fix the
big stuff?
Of course.
We learn how to interpret others' behaviors and respond accordingly. If you're playing with somebody, you get a sense. You can adjust.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You piss off Tommy, you're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Because oh no, Tommy's good. He's good now. I can take it. He's good.
You develop physical and emotional self-control.
Yeah.
Problem-solving skills, conflict resolution, and you learn how to make friends. This is all happens from playing.
Y'all. And that's also like, what helps you get over most fears? Doing it, playing with it, behaving in that, getting you comfortable and getting your brain from a thought pattern standpoint kind of going in a more positive direction regarding that aforementioned stimuli. That's okay. What am I doing? What's this?
I'm going to handing TJ a pen and paper because I'm going to ask you guys questions and I'm going to ask TJ questions. I'm going to have them keep track. You're going to measure how resilient you are.
Okay.
All right, so you're going to rate how much each of the following applies to you on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being very little and 5 being very much.
Okay.
All right, so here's the first fact. You're curious, you ask questions, you want to know how things work, and you like to experiment. Does that apply to you very little or very much?
I would say 4.
And keep track. You constantly learn from your experience and the experience of others. Does that apply to you very little, a 1, or very 5, very much?
Very much. I would say 4 though, because I think a 5 is going to be hard for me to get.
Need and expect to have things work well for yourself and others, and take good care of yourself.
Need and expect to have things work well for yourself and others. Can you rephrase that? What do you mean? Need and expect to have things work well, like.
You need things to go the way you expect them to go. Otherwise, you're kind of thrown for a loop.
I think I can kind of roll with the punches, but take good care of yourself I find to be the kind of different to what that previous sentence was. So I'm just a little confused about that. I think you need to take good care of yourself. I don't think I need things to work well, so I just guess I'll get right in between. I'll give it a 3 because I guess I'm kind of both.
Play with new developments, find the humor, laugh yourself, chuckle.
Yeah, that's me.
All right, highly flexible, adapt quickly to change. 1 would be very little, 5 would be very much. You feel comfortable with paradoxical qualities. 1 very little and 5 very much. Like 2 opposing qualities, like things that you think are kind of in conflict. You're comfortable with that conflict.
I was comfortable with it. Give it 4. I'll get better at that. Thanks, therapy.
Anticipate problems and avoid difficulties. Does that apply to you very little or very much? Can you anticipate problems and avoid difficulties?
Yeah. I've been giving myself 5s. I think 5s are. Let's see if anything pops out. I have to go back and give myself 5s on some of these.
Develop better self-esteem and self-confidence with the passage of time. Develop a conscious self-concept of professionalism. Well, I would give you a 5 in that one. As you've gotten older, your self-esteem, your self-confidence has increased, and you are very professional for your age, I would say.
If you say so.
Listen well, read others, including difficult people, with empathy. Kind of have to in your job. So 1 would be very little, 5 very much.
I'm going to go back and give all these 5.
Think up creative solutions to challenges, invent ways to solve problems, and trust your intuition and your hunches.
Yeah, that's a 4. That's definitely a 4.
Manage the emotional side of recovery from trauma. Let go of the past.
Luckily enough, I have all that much trauma, so that's been pretty easy in general. So yeah, I would say manage the emotional side of recovery from trauma. Let go of the past. I would say a 4, just due to lack thereof, I guess, but still good with, because trauma could be a lot of different things for a lot of different people. So I guess I'll give it a 4.
Expect tough situations to work out well. Keep on going. Help others. Bring stability to times of uncertainty and turmoil.
Yeah, these are going to be 4s and 4s and 5s. All these are 4s and 5s, except for the one that confused me.
Find the good in accidents and bad experiences. That's something I do pretty well. Whenever like my car breaks down or I get to an accident, I'm always appreciative of the fact that it could have been worse. It could have been 120 degrees out. It could have been on the freeway. I'm in a safe spot. I cannot complain. Yeah, I'm pretty good at that one. Convert misfortune into good fortune. 1 very little. Yeah, you are. But I knew that was going to happen.
I do really well with a lot of those. Just the one with where was it? Need and expect to have things work well for yourself, and I expect things to work well for me, but I don't need it to work well for others because it's more so I can control myself and not others.
Right. So I think in general, you have an expectation that things are always going to work well, regardless of, even if they don't, because you automatically reframe it.
Boom.
So
I outthought
if
the
you,
resiliency question with more resilience.
I did. So if you add those up and you have a 60 to 70, you are considered a highly resilient.
What's 12 times 4? Is that 48?
48. If you are between 50 and 60, you are above average resiliency. If you're 40 to 50, you're average resiliency. So you got 48. I don't think you gave yourself.
I don't think
you
so
held
either.
back.
I technically was right in the middle of above average resiliency, but yeah, I agree. I could go back
Right.
and probably give myself highs on these. I think I was being hard on myself. But hey, aren't we all?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
30 to 40 below average resiliency, and then below 30, unusually low resiliency. So just to give you, I think what's really important to take away there is to think about the kind of questions you were asked. And it's regardless of the score, you can get a feel for how resilient you feel you are, if that's something you actually need to work on.
And then go back up. Yeah, you can think about. So if you're not good at some of these things, then you have to say curious, ask questions, want to know how things work, experiment. If you've been not wanting to know how certain things have worked because you've been afraid or because of them in the past, now would be a good time to question those things, right? If you are not highly flexible, adapt quickly to change, put yourself in a situation where it's going to be within reason more of a control and change, but still getting you comfortable from a neurological plasticity standpoint of accepting it and actually coping well through it. Manage the emotional side of recovery from trauma, let go of the past. And if that one's not good, you got to work through it. You got to talk through it and, cognitively develop a coping skill to keep going through it. But you kind of get the point. Whichever you score low, there's ways to improve it because you can actually put yourself in a lot of these positions.
And the good news is more and more studies are showing that we can learn to be more resilient. That is not a trait that stays consistent over time. You can improve on that.
You can improve on any personality attribute. Some are going to be hard, some are going to be easy, but you can improve on any personality attribute. Come at me.
So one of the first things you can do is work on building connections, and that would be prioritizing your relationships, joining a group. And I think the other thing to that area is to surround yourself with people who make you feel good about yourself, or maybe even that are slightly more, have more of a skill set than you'd like, so that you can kind of emulate and model them.
Yeah, so a good example, I was just actually talking to my mom about this. I feel like obviously once everything is all done, I want to start going to clubs on you see the clubs on Facebook for really particular skills, right? Or very particular instances, like the night owls where you go out and look at stars, and or the drawing club or this or that. So the Facebook's got a whole bunch of those for you to go out and find.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Because when we do those things that interest us, we do well at them because we have an interest in them. When we do well in them, we feel better about ourselves. We become more resilient. It's just taking those steps.
Yeah.
Foster wellness. And we talk about this all the time. Take care of you. Practice mindfulness. Avoid negative outlooks.
Treat yourself, but
That's
mentally,
right.
though.
Finding a purpose.
Why did you wake up this morning? Sorry.
No, perfect. Helping others, being proactive, move towards your goals, and look for opportunities of self-discovery. That's right to your point, what you were talking about. Going out there and experiencing life, because it's okay to experience and then fail, because you learn and you grow.
Take what everyone else says with a grain of salt, because you have to go out and see for yourself.
Embrace healthy thoughts. So keep things in perspective. We talk about that a lot too.
Yeah.
Accept change, because there's no normal anymore, right? No normal.
Normalcy is an excuse.
Maintain a hopeful outlook. We've talked about that before. Whole podcast on hope. Check it out. And learn from our past. Continue.
Did we do one on hope?
We did.
That is so bizarre, because we just told you another one that you can go to. It's weird.
It's all connecting. There's some science-based strategies too, science-backed. See, I just did that earlier and you didn't catch that. While you were talking, I did this. I put it right next to my shirt.
Well, I noticed things. I'm just not going to react irrationally.
Oh.
Want me to give you a high five?
I'm feeling a little needy, I guess. Science-backed strategies. Change the narrative. Try expressive writing. That's one technique. So spend 20 minutes writing your deepest thoughts about one particular topic, right? The other thing you can do is a technique called find silver linings, which is taking a bad experience and finding 3 positive things from it.
Yes, that's a good one to do just in general. When you tend to find yourself being negative and going on a rant, you have to stop yourself and finding 5 things around you that you're grateful for. And even going back to the narratives, because when you're writing, people say, why can't I just express it verbally? Because when you're writing it down, it forces you to slow yourself down because it's a cognitive stimulator, because it's not natural for us to actually be writing. So when you're writing, it slows it down. And you start to kind of get a little bit more conscientious, become a little bit more emotionally regulated as you're doing the writing. And by the end of it, you're like, a lot of this looks irrational, possibly selfish, possibly a lot of those things that we tend to get to automatically when we are just kind of subconsciously going through it.
Yeah. Face your fears. That's another science-backed strategy, a systematic desensitization. So if there's something that you're afraid of, makes you anxious or nervous, slowly work yourself into it. Maybe spend, if you're afraid of heights but you want to join a hiking club, find a smaller hill, then a larger hill, and eventually expose yourself to that area that you're where your real fear resides.
Staircase to success, my friends. One small step at a time. Nutrition, trauma, this, that, so on and so many steps getting to the top.
Another science-backed strategy is practice self-compassion. We talk about this a lot.
Down on ourselves, man.
Yeah, take a self-compassion break. And so you take a break and you be mindful, remember you're not alone, and be kind to yourself. Or maybe even think about how you would treat a friend in the same situation, because that will reframe it.
Always put it from, like, if your friend was asking for advice in the same situation that you're talking about, because your advice is going to be a lot more quick to the point, no ifs, ands, or buts, and it's going to be a lot easier because you have that bird's eye view, and then you're like, crap, this really is the actual reality of the situation.
And then a self-compassionate letter. Write yourself a letter demonstrating, compassion to yourself. So, the next science-based strategy is meditate. When we talk about that a lot too. Yes.
There's actually a lot of science behind it in the effects that it has on the autonomic nervous system, which, if you know, the autonomic nervous system is thought to be run kind of outside of our awareness almost automatically, so to speak. So if we have a little bit more control of that just with your breath, that might be powerful.
Absolutely. Another science-backed strategy is cultivate forgiveness. Forgive yourself, but also forgive other people too.
We hold ourselves to like our own prison record, so to speak, right? We hold all the mistakes that we made and just got to let it go because it's back there. You got to leave it back there because it's not serving you any purpose. If anything, it's just holding you back because you got to let go of these things, man. You made mistakes and that's fine. Today's a new day. Each day is a new life.
Another opportunity. So this week, we want you to do 2 things. We want you to play. But we also want you to fail. We want you to fail at something so you have an opportunity to practice being resilient so that you can live your best life.
You fail once a week. Always find something that you're not particularly good at or try to push yourself in a way that you never thought imaginable. Boom.
All right, thank you. We'll
see you next
week on Tuesday.